I'm Bev from almostoffgrid.com. Today I'm going to show you how we extract the honey from our wax cappings and our crushed honeycomb from our hives so that we can make mead with it. So in this bucket we've got about 1.5 kilograms of crushed honeycomb and beeswax cappings from our hives. You may keep your hives in a different way from us. What you might do is extract your honey from your frames and then put your frames back into your hive for the bees to fill with honey and brood again. But we don't do that. We have 2 national hives and we have 1 top bar hive, and we use no foundation in our nationals at all. So when we have bees in our hive for the first time, they build all their comb from scratch, and then when we extract our honey, all we do is take out a couple of frames at a time, cut them out, extract the honey that way through a filter, and we are left with all this yummy honeycomb and cappings to use. So if you don't keep your bees in this way, or you don't have hives at all, but you know a beekeeper that does have a lot of surplus honeycomb and cappings, they might be prepared to give you their wax in exchange for mead, which is what we did at the beginning. When we first started beekeeping, we didn't have honey for the first year or so we didn't have any honeycomb, but we knew a local beekeeper who couldn't use all her comb, so she gave us some and we turned it into mead. So that's another option if you haven't got this much comb of your own, but if you have, it's fantastic for making mead. So if you're going to make mead from crushed honeycomb and wax cappings, you will need your crushed honeycomb and wax cappings in a big bucket. You'll need a separate bucket because at some point we'll be transferring from one to another, so you need to be able to move from there to here. You'll also need some way of measuring your water. We use bottled water because having got this far we couldn't quite bear there to be any contaminants in the water that affect the mead, so we always buy bottled water, but it's very cheap at the supermarket. We here have a large filtering bag that you would normally use for homebrew. You don't have to use one of these because we run a homebrew shop, we've always got these, but you could use a pillowcase or a piece of cotton sheet or something like that, because this is going to be your filter. And we use some pegs just to peg that onto the bucket later on. You might also need a hydrometer, and we'll talk about that later as well. So we don't need any more of that for the time being. I'm going to pour this water onto the cappings and the comb. I'm going to take off my bracelet, which wouldn't be a very good idea. And I am going to wear food grade, talcless, for obvious reasons, gloves. You don't have to, I'm just a delicate flower and I prefer to wear gloves when I'm doing this. So they're going on. So the gloves are on, the water's in. What I'm going to do is massage the comb. To start with, you think this isn't enough water, but as you go along, things break up, and as you can see what I'm doing as I go along, I squeeze the comb to get out as much honey as we can from the comb and the cappings. I'm going to carry on sort of kneading, you might say, this comb for about 3 minutes or so, and then I'm going to strain it through my straining bag and see what we have at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to put the pegs on the bucket to keep things in place. Obviously, if you've got someone doing this with you, you might not need to do all this, but I know from experience that I end up with my bag slipping into my bucket, and if you put pegs on, it doesn't. Pouring the contents of this bucket, the first bucket, into the second bucket through the straining bag. So it's in there, and what I'm going to do now is add more water to this and have another massage. So now it's in the straining bag, or your sheet, or whatever it is you're using. I'm pouring in another ½ litre of bottled water into the comb. I'm going to give it another good old move around to try and extract more of that lovely honey that's on that comb. I'm doing this small batch, as you've gathered. We always end up doing this small batch because we take off only 2 or 3 frames of honey at any one time. We rarely do a massive honey extraction, but obviously if you've got lots of comb, then you can do this on a larger scale, just double everything. So now we've done that, I'm going to take the pegs off. Draw up the straining bag. And give it a good squeeze. Trying to get as much honey out of this comb as we can.
Okay.
Right, so what I've done is I've taken some of the honey water that came out of the bag and I've put it in a trial jar of a hydrometer. Now I mentioned at the beginning, you may or may not need a hydrometer. I'm demonstrating to you that just that simple exercise was enough to get honey water of sufficiently high honey content to make mead. You could carry on with that exercise. You could carry on straining it through and massaging it. However, just that 3 minutes in the second bucket that I showed you. Hang on. There's a hydrometer. That red section is for a dessert wine, which is where you want to be more or less for mead making. Typically for mead making, you want a starting gravity of anything between 1.060 and 1.120 on a hydrometer, and we're in excess of 1.1 on this hydrometer. So this this honey water is perfect for making mead. Right, so we've done that. Take out the hydrometer, pour the contents of the trial jar back in. You will notice I haven't mentioned sterilising or anything up until this point. That's because there's not much point in sterilising before you get to this point. A beehive isn't a sterile environment, so the comb is not sterile. And you want the goodies in the honey to help with the fermentation. However, we've prepared this. This is ready for brewing now. Everything you do from this point on requires sterilisation. So that is going to be the end of this video whilst we go away now, sterilise all our equipment and start making mead in a sterile environment. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe to our channel and please give us a like for the video, and we hope to see you again soon.